Good morning and welcome to our quarterly meeting of the Gardner Route Skills Maker Forum. As we know that the purpose of our forum is to provide a platform for our stakeholders in the Gardner Route to deliberate and give input into the skills needs of our local economy. In the forum today, we will focus on renewable energy as per the agenda. Now, I think all of us will agree that renewable energy has been, for the past couple of years, a very hot topic. It's an item or issue that's being discussed at various levels. Many governments and business organizations in Africa, but also around the globe, have begun to wake up to the need for more renewable energy. And I think in South Africa, we are a bit behind than the rest of Europe or America. The energy sources that we will today focus on will be on solar power, but in some of our presentations, there will be a reference to other renewable energy sources like wind and waves. And in terms of how are we in the Gardner Route are looking into the future in terms of those energy sources and how do we position ourselves. Today, there's a lot of talk about the benefits for the environment. Some believe that it will be improve health. We will have less disasters, floods, drought, and other natural disasters. The economic benefits, it's also being highlighted to us on a daily basis, that it will promote economic growth within our areas, and of course will create jobs. On the other side, of course, as we deliberate in these discussions, is while we are optimistic about the jobs and the potentials for our economy, we must also, of course, at the same side, look in terms of the negative impacts that it will have in terms of jobs, in terms of other energy sources that we are currently using. And also in terms of the sustainability of the jobs that will be created or that are being created by renewable energy. There's debates in terms of whether these jobs that are being created is going to be actually sustainable on the long term, especially at the lower levels. So today we have a panel of experts that will touch on these matters and bring some light to some of the questions that we still have. Our focus, of course, is skills development. And the question immediately arises that whether we have the correct skill set within our district as we embark on our endeavors to also have renewable energy sources within our district. We will have basically two topics that we will be discussing today. The one will focus on what do employers and contractors in the solar energy sectors need to know about skills development implications. And we will have a presentation by Mr. Pierce from the CSIR and also from Mr. Van Skalbeek from the Green Energy Forum of the Gardner Route. That is one of our economic clusters as part of our economic clusters for the district. The second topic will focus on possible partnerships across the Gardner Route, and there will be input on the just energy transition. We will have two presentations, one from the EW SETA, Energy and Water SETA. The presentation will be done by Ms. Vilekasi. Hopefully, or possible, we still have a possibility that the CEO, Ms. Mukapele, might join us also from Italy. But the CFO, Ms. Robin Velakasi, will join us after 10. We will then also have a presentation from Ms. Freeman from GIZ, and she will have a discussion with Dr. Flores. So colleagues, that will be our business for the day. A special welcome to all our panelists for this meeting. I have received already an apology from Ms. Jacobs that she will leave us at 11:30, but she will still be with us to give her update from the Western Cape CETA Forum. So let me then, Doc, immediately hand over to our first presenter, which will be Mr. P.S. from the CSIR. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. De Vries. I'm going to share your screen. Let's see how this works.
We can see.
Okay. Which side are you seeing? The full screen or the notes?
Full screen.
Full screen, fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much. As has been noted, I'm Warwick Pierce from the CSIR, work within the Energy Center, the technical lead on energy systems modeling. So this project has been coming for quite a while, but most of the work was done to the end of last year. The report handed in by the end of the year, and then we have provided an updated report sort of early this year. So the title is Municipal Electricity Master Plan, done for the Gardner District Municipality. So a municipal electricity master plan could be sort of summarized as a mini IRP, but we went a little bit further than what the national IRP has done. So it's, just to be noted, it's a GIZ funded project, which was also co-funded from the CSIR. Obviously, the CSIR is a research arm of government. We're around about 3/4 privately funded and 1/4 from government funding. So that government funding allows us to do go do more sort of academic research in some ways, or just research that wouldn't otherwise be paid for. So as I mentioned, Municipal Electricity Master Plan is a mini IRP. What we're trying to do is it's very difficult to predict the future. So we're not saying there's one truth. We always sort of, what are the possible electricity futures for the garden route? And this is kind of information that would inform the possible job creation futures for the garden route. So the differences between the Gardner District Municipality and the national IRP, which was last updated in 2019, is we followed a regional approach. So you'll see on the right, obviously the South Africa and the Gardner District Municipality, which falls entirely in the Western Cape, which comprises of the 7 different municipalities. And what we did is for instance, the national IRP then assumes South Africa is one node. So it sees it as 1 point. What we did is we said we're going to do an individual IRP for each of these municipalities. And we'll see later on that we actually then looked at the 2 different options, which is an optimization per municipality. So what is the best thing for Mossel Bay, Oudtshoorn, George, etc., or what is the best thing for the Garden Route District as a whole. And then the other thing that was further development was on the customer resource side. So what we're seeing, and we'll see as one of the key takeaways, and has been noted by Mr. De Vries, is the world is changing. There's disruptive technologies, most notably or specifically Rooftop Pv. Before, customers didn't have any choice. It was either I buy from Iscom or I buy from a municipality. And if I'm in a municipality supply area, I can only buy from the municipality. That's changed, and now customers are actually allowed to exercise their right to alternatives. For instance, Rooftop Pv. If I want to, I can put Rooftop Pv on my own roof, generate electricity for myself, and in some instances, export that to the grid. So just before I move on, what is the time, more or less, what are we expecting? How long is this presentation? Should it be? Sorry, colleagues.
Apologies. We have allocated, I think, about let me just see. 20 minutes. Will that be fine?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's fine. So I'll
Okay,
try.
thank you.
So just a little bit in terms of the study structure. What's important is to note that we clearly define 4 entities, which is the customer, the technology, the local resource, and the utility. So the utility would be the municipality and Iscom. And what we purposely did is in this graphic is to separate customer and utility. Before, this was a direct linkage, but now we've got technology and we've got the local resource. So again, this sort of disruptive technologies, in terms of customers having alternatives, they are not captive anymore. Then just the different phases, the status quo, the forecasting and analysis, capacity expansion modeling, which is a different word for IRP, and then the impact assessments in terms of, well, what does this mean for the municipalities or for the regions? But what's important to note is that 2 is where we sort of do a lot of the rooftop PV analysis. So we sort of say, well, what are we expecting the customers to provide? Because there's no point in the utility, which could be seen as municipality or as Eskom, to plan for the future. And they think, well, we need to deliver X amount of kilowatt hours, and this is the service that's needed. But if the customer is going to start supplementing that service, then that would obviously reduce, well, depending on many factors. But if keeping all things equal, it would then reduce. But in the end, what the focus is, and what we're presenting mostly on today is also the impacts. You know, what are the options for the municipality in terms of obviously the standard, and we'll discuss these scenarios later. The business as usual is just keep on doing what you're doing right now. Keep on buying from electricity, being 100% dependent on them, and as you continue with that. Okay, sorry, next slide. So just the first thing is to get to know your customer. And this is something, I've got a background quite a bit in cost of supply studies with municipalities. And obviously something that's key is get to know your customers. Like the municipalities should really become more acquainted with their numbers, with how their customers' behavior is changing. And to do that, you need to know what they're currently doing. So first looking at historic. So what we typically do is we then divide or distinguish between residential, commercial, and industrial customers. And you see that these ABC or AB to G are the different municipalities. And this first one is just showing you the difference in between the number of customers. So we can see that the region is dominated by residential customers. So this is not a very heavy commercial and industrial area. And then on the right, in terms of total annual sales, we can see that then that discrepancy between the different customer classes is much less, where we're seeing, for instance, in this one municipality where most of this is actually one industrial customer. So this municipality is actually Kananaland, and they're very vulnerable to that sort of high concentration of their sales with a single or a few customers, industrial. Then in terms of your Eskom purchases, so you know, this is just trying to find out the difference in the brick. So currently, all of the municipalities are 100% reliant or purchase all of the electricity from their bulk purchases from Eskom. And we're just sort of showing the sort of annual gigawatt hours in terms of showing the spread of the size. So we got sort of a fairly small, again, so Kananaland, and then moving to our largest, which is George of 435. So there's a significant range between these municipalities, you know, more than a factor of 10 here. What is interesting to note is with this HD, it just stands for high demand versus low demand. So that's high demand in terms of Eskom, which is the June, July, August months. So what we're just trying to look at there is to find a factor of how do those months, which has been normalized, compared to the rest of the year. Generally, throughout the country, that would be above 1, because we use more demand during winter than we do in summer. But we can actually see that some places actually have lower. And again, this might have to do with the usage, but also in terms of holiday makers, which generally don't come during the winter months, but come during the summer months. In terms of solar PV costing, so this is one of the technologies that we have spent more focus on. There's what they call the CapEx, so just the capital expenditure so every watt of solar PV system that you would need to install, what would you need to pay? And this is then just based on international literature, but also in terms of our local experience within South Africa. For instance, the CSR Pretoria, or rather Tshwane offices, have around about 2 megawatts of solar PV installed on our roofs. So those are our offices. Then this graph is very busy, but it's just to sort of show you, well, the important thing with trying to say what the municipality or the region should build is to say, well, what do we know what the costs are right now? And that's fairly well known. But the question is, what is it going to cost in 5 years times, in 10 years times, in 20 years times? That's sort of quantified with a learning rate. So what we'll see is it just normalized, and we say, well, this is take the current cost right now, and then we normalize it to 100, and then we sort of see the learning curve is what you could sort of see this as. And generally, there's a variation between, you know, very steep to fairly steep, but we're fairly comfortable that the solar PV prices will be reducing. So what we use for our modeling is this middle yellow line that you're seeing there. And then this was just followed on for, this is utility scale, so large scale. So call it maybe above 1 megawatt, and then residential, a few kilowatts. And then so we looked at anything between would be the commercial and industrial. So we're just seeing a higher learning rate within residential than within utility. This is expected because utility in South Africa, solar PV is well known. I mean, we've got numerous 75 megawatt PV plants around the country, where residential is, you know, there's more room for improvement there. So just the final in terms of solar PV costing, again, just showing the quite a significant reduction that we're seeing, you know, sort of 46-50% by 2030, 2040. So solar PV costing is expected to keep on declining. In terms of the actual local resources, so this is just a map of the Gardner district, sort of showing the darker areas with better resource, and we're seeing this is just generally over the escarpment that we've got here. So this is one of the things that, you know, most people sort of spoke to us about before, is about saying, well, we know that the sun is better in Oudtshoorn than it is in George. Well, that's sort of a no-brainer, but the question is then, you know, to quantify that. And we can see on the right here, a higher capacity factor would mean a better solar resource. So Oudtshoorn and Kananaland are, again, on the other side of the escarpment, have a higher solar resource than the sort of municipalities on the coast. Just on the right, this is just comparing typical solar resources of internationally. So we can just see how, even though we're saying, you know, George is not as good as Oudtshoorn, it's still significantly better than other regions in the world, especially, for instance, you know, Germany, which has installed a lot of solar PV. And then, as Mr. De Vries has also noted before, this is not just about solar. Renewables, the sort of biggest two drivers of renewables in the world at the moment is solar PV and then wind as well. So utility scale wind, where on solar resource, the variation between a good site and a, you know, an average site is not that high. For instance, South Africa, you know, Uppington versus something like Johannesburg, maybe 25% better. But the difference between a fantastic wind site and a not such a good wind site can be significantly more, could be, for instance, more than double. So it's good to have actually some sort of quantification of variation of wind across the area. And these are the sort of sites that we did. So what we did is we said, okay, well, this is the municipality, so we know the area, and we say, well, let's go look for a good wind site in that region. We didn't try sort of find the ultimate or the best, but we try to find a good wind site. So we can see on the right here, again, the numbers showing most of the wind sites. So the capacity factor is just the higher, the better. The only one that's sort of what we saw is that they're fairly good, or actually very good. For instance, George, Knysna is not a particularly good wind site. And I live sort of close to Knysna, and I can contest, we can sort of attest to that Knysna is not a windy area. So in terms of demand forecasting, just a quick one on this on the right. This is what we keep on doing on the national scale, and we keep on getting it wrong. Since around about 2008, the national demand in South Africa has actually slightly decreased, or plateaued, or decreased. But for some reason, we keep on thinking it's going to increase. And so what we did with demand forecasting for the Gardner route is we saw across the municipalities, there's some are slightly increasing, some are slightly decreasing, but it seems fairly stable. So what our assumption is that the utility supply demand, so what the municipalities are going to see is actually going to remain constant, which I think was a fair assumption. Iscom tariff projections. This is something that a lot of our clients are sort of battling with and saying, well, what should we expect into the future? It's a difficult question. But what we did is we just used the Iscom Megaflex, which provides around about 95% of what the municipalities are buying in the region. And then we took a sort of an indication. We can see here this blue line, which is then showing, what this is the IRP that that was done before, the modeling, what they used. And we would use a little bit higher than what the IRP is using. For instance, around about starting at 12.5% and dropping to 10, and then dropping as we're going to sort of closer to CPI of some sort. The other thing that was done is that this increase that you're seeing here is the average increase. But Eskom has also indicated that they're going to be moving away from volumetric tariff signal, which just says rand per kilowatt hour, more towards fixed, which is sort of a monthly fee, and a demand, which is a rand per kVA. So those are then also included into the demand the tariff projections for Eskom. Then just sort of using an equivalent energy tariff. So this is sort of including all of the time of uses, off-peak, standard, and peak. And we're seeing currently, looking around about around 30 that the municipalities are paying, and this will increase to around 92. So a bit of a slower increase than others would expect, but we do believe that Eskom will be moving slightly away from just a rand per kilowatt hour. So in terms of the rooftop PV, there's 3 main steps. The first one is saying how much roof space is there. Go and find out that. Then you need to do a sort of a calculator. Sorry, these aren't work in progresses. These have been completed. Calculate the business case. So saying, well, if one of your customers were to put rooftop PV on their roof, would it make financial sense? How much financial sense would it make? And then from that, we estimate an adoption rate for the region. So the cool thing that we had, our timing with the project was fairly good. Last year, Google released their open buildings data for the whole of Africa. It's really a fantastic resource. You can see it on the right here, which is just showing the yellow, which is commercial, and then the blue is residential. So that was done based on other GIS layers, but you can see that it's not always right. For instance, in A, we're seeing here that that's actually one roof, but it's been divided into different roofs. And for instance, B, we're slightly seeing it's missing a few here. But overall, the data is fairly accurate. So again, we did a lot of samples just to make sure that the data is accurate. And then also what we're doing is we're saying, it's one thing to say, well, this is, X amount of square meters on this roof, but how much of that is usable? So then from that, we have to sort of say, well, what each roof is facing. Obviously north facing is ideal. South facing roofs can't really be used. And then from that, we used per customer class, so residential, commercial, industrial, and per municipality. Then we get sort of a factor, kind of a loss factor that we could use. So then we get the GIS output, and then that translates all the way down to, this is just an example. So if you had 100 square meters of roof space, then we would, based on sort of the yellow block sampling, we'd say, well, of that, we're losing around about 35%. So there's 65 square meters. And then another factor, I think it was around about 25%. Or 20% or so, in terms of just identifying for shading, for structural issues that might be there, and then we get to sort of 50. So this is on average for the region, but it's around about half of what was identified with GIS is classified as usable roof space. Then based on sort of the PV potential in terms of energy density or power density, you get an 8 kilowatt system, which then based on the local resource, again, this is done per municipality based on the resource, you're getting a certain amount of output. So then what we said is, well, let's go look, and we said, let's go install all of that roof space. Let's go install PV on it and see how much actually megawatts we can actually get. And then this is done per municipality and per customer class. Again, blue residential, orange commercial, and the top one is industrial. So again, we're seeing there's not that much space on industrial. This is more of a residential area, but a variation within the municipalities. Again, George, obviously the largest. Interesting, Mossel Bay not that far behind. But we said is that if we went and can still put PV on all of the available roof space, we get to around about 1,750 megawatts, which is around about 7 times the maximum demand for the region. So it's just showing that there's plenty of roof space. So to try and make it something that's not so academic, we did a bit of a hypothetical question. We said, how much of that roof space that has been identified in the previous slide would need to be used or utilized to provide 100% of the annual energy demand? So if the residential customers in George require X amount, of kilowatt hours electricity per the year, how much of that roof space would need to be PV would be put on. We can sort of see there on the residential side, looking at anything from, around about 15-20% up to 33%. So there's more than enough space on the residential side. On the commercial side, slightly higher, looking at around about 40-50%, and then on industrial space there's not enough roof space, so which makes sense because the industrial users have a very high energy density, so they're using big machines, even though they got fairly big factories, but the amount of electricity they're using there is much higher than the residential on a per square meter basis. So the short answer is that only 36% would need to be installed for the region, so around about 650 megawatts PV, and that would provide the annual volumetric usage. Obviously, this doesn't consider timing of the electricity usage. For instance, there's no solar PV at night. This is a very busy slide, and we'll sort of take you through quite quickly. This is looking at the business model. So what is the business case for per municipality in the different times? So 2022, 2025, 2030, 2040. The higher the value you're seeing here in terms of a net present value, the more attractive. And then obviously we're seeing with time, as the costs, as Iscom costs increases and as solar PV costs decrease, we're seeing it becoming more attractive. But in general, depending on sort of costing, but in general, we're seeing that even now, in most cases, or let's rather say in many cases, solar PV makes sense on the residential scale, but by sort of 2040 in almost all cases, and this is just followed through. The commercial business case is even stronger than residential, and industrial is even stronger than that. So, or commercial is actually sort of the strongest. So it's interesting to note that solar PV makes sense in most instances right now, but by 2040 in almost all instances, I think actually in all instances, it has a very strong business case. So it's just for the municipalities to note that there will be adoption. We're currently seeing it obviously around the world, and even within the Gardner routes, that your customers will start installing solar PV on their roofs. So the question then is, who's going to install it, and how much are they going to install, and by when is it going to be installed? So obviously there's the technical, there's this amount of roof space, then there's the business case, does it make financial sense? Other sort of indicators which can be used is proximity to previous adopters. So essentially, does my neighbor have a rooftop PV? And as more people have it, then more neighbors have it, and then it's sort of this sort of exponential growth that you will see later on. Something that we didn't consider but can be considered is do you have access to the necessary funds? Obviously your more affluent customers will be installing solar PV first, and building type. If I'm renting, I'm not going to install solar PV. I don't know if I'm going to be here long enough to reap those benefits. So ownership also plays a part. So what you're seeing on the left is sort of just a standard S curve, or a BAS diffusion curve, which says in the beginning your adoption is fairly low. Any new technology or new product, the technology, it's always low because people don't know about it, but then it would increase, and then to some point it would reach sort of a peak, what we're seeing here in terms of adoption. And then as you saturate the market, you'll get sort of asymptotically trying to move towards 100%. So using data within the municipality, we estimated that around about 3.5% of your customers have already adopted solar PV on their roofs. And then based on other parameters, we see by around about 2030 that around about almost 10 or 9%, and then by 2040 approximately 25%. This is because there's very little historic data on solar PV. This is quite gray, so I would just be careful to treat this as an exact science. Okay, then on the utility scale, we looked at 4 different scenarios. Business as usual, which says just keep on buying from Iscom. Then there's least cost, which says what is the cheapest for the municipality per each municipality. And then we said least cost with transmission, or with wheeling, so the least cost for the region. And there's the autonomy, which says, okay, if we're going to force each of the municipalities to be disconnected from Iscom by 2030, what do they need to do? And how much is that going to cost? So then the results are what to build. So we divided it into, this is for the whole region, both top and bottom tables is for the whole of the garden route. And we said in the short term, the medium term, the long term. So the short term, so the next 3 years, medium term 2025 to 2029, and then long term from 2030 onwards to 2040. What do you need to build? So this internal combustion engine, this was not used. This was only used in the autonomy case. Open cycle gas turbine. So this is similar to the same as what Eskom's got in terms of burning diesel. And then we've got solar PV, wind, and battery installations. So this is without wheeling. So this is per nodal. And we see that the only option that the model has, or that's realistic in the short term, you can only pretty much build PV and batteries. Wind is a longer term. Will you have, even if the municipality or the garden route decides right now we want to procure solar wind, it's highly unlikely that that'll be installed before 2025. So that's the reason why you're not seeing wind in the short term. Yeah, it's not because it's not viable. It's just because of the lead times. But overall, we're looking at around about more than 200 megawatts of PV on wheeling, without wheeling or with wheeling, and then batteries. And then later on, we're seeing quite a bit of wind that's coming in with more batteries. So that's providing of what's going to be built. And then from this, you could take these numbers of megawatts and then say, what does that translate into of jobs? Then on the bottom, following a regional versus a nodal approach, what we generally saw, and I'll just sort of try and highlight this, for instance, in Knysna, we would see that there would be no wind installed if the regional approach is followed, just because it's not a good solar resource. And we're seeing that, for instance, George would become an importer from Mossel Bay and from Oudtshoorn, which have got better resources. And then Mossel Bay and Oudtshoorn would become exporters as well as Bateau. Okay, so then just getting down to the actual numbers. So this is what's going to cost to keep on being reliant on Eskom, this amount of millions. Then what can you reduce the costs by going with the least cost approach that was shown earlier without wheeling? So you can do around about 24% decrease in costing over this period of 2022 to 2040. You can have around about 50% in terms of CO2 emissions reduction, and the same roundabout for water. Then to go from least costs with transmission, so with wheeling within the region, so optimizing per region, you can get a further 3% cost savings, but it's significantly more environmental savings. We're seeing the 22 and 19% there. Then the last one, which is the 100% autonomy by 2030. So we can see that this is going to cost you more than least costs. So from a techno-economic point of view, it's not optimal, but it's going to, so sort of a 9% premium on the least cost, but it's still cheaper than business as usual, still cheaper than being completely connected on Eskom. So then in terms of what we're just showing here, this is 100% share. So this is what you're doing right now, which is buying from Eskom. So you're 100% dependent on Eskom in terms of your energy share. Then if you were, for instance, this is the least cost without wheeling. If you were to implement that, you would see that you would get a significant reduction in your Eskom reliance, and you can actually get to 50% reliance with Eskom by sort of 2027. This is your renewable energy share, which currently is 0, and this would significantly increase. And we can see for the region actually being above 75%. But again, to get to 50% of your energy coming from renewables before 2027. This graph is just showing the difference between wheeling and non-wheeling. In short, by looking at a regional approach, you can actually reduce your energy reliance on Eskom, and you can actually increase your variable renewable energy share. So, sorry, I've probably gone a bit over the 20 minutes, but the key takeaways
I will give you another 2 minutes to just conclude. Thank you. Cool.
This is the last slide, so I'm fairly on time then. So the key takeaways from this is very much a technical a modeling approach, where we're looking at sort of a mathematical optimization of what is best for the Gardner district municipality and the actual individual municipalities from a energy supply options. So what are your alternatives to Eskom right now, and how much is it going to cost? So even before getting to the utility scale, it's important to focus on the customer resource side. So we said that solar PV, rooftop solar PV will play a significant role in electricity, or can. It's currently playing a fairly smaller role, but it can play a significantly bigger role into the future. So it's just something for decision makers, and this is not just for the Garden route, this is for South Africa in a whole, and this is for the world as a whole, is to say, well, we need to be mindful of this customer resource. And for me, it's always interesting to say, well, how do you promote the sustainable and responsible utilization of this customer resource? So whose right is it to generate electricity? Should the customer be allowed to have that right? Should it stay with the municipality? Should it be only with Eskom? So these are more sort of philosophical questions that the municipalities need to think about, and so there'll be guidance and policy coming from DMRE on this. Again, just saying that if only 36% of the available roof space would be used, there would be enough energy provided for the whole district. So it's been shown, and this is the first of its kind that I know of, that's been shown that there's ample roof space within the area. On the utility scale, so more on what the municipality can do, is the first thing to note is that doing nothing is expensive. It's a really high opportunity cost. By carrying on with Eskom, you're missing out on a potential of almost 25% reduction in costs, and that's even more amplified when you look at the environmental costs. So your CO2 emissions, your water usage can also be reduced by 50% by implementing a least cost approach. Then wheeling of the electricity within the region, so optimizing for the region rather than optimizing per individual municipality. You can actually further reduce costs, not significantly more, because there's also a cost to wheeling, but the environmental and the reliance of Eskom is actually quite significant. Then lastly, and this is something that is just wanted to highlight again, it is not optimal to disconnect from Eskom. So I know there are stories going around the country that, well, the best thing for municipalities to do is to disconnect from Eskom. That doesn't make sense from a technical point of view, neither does it make sense from an economic point of view. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Was quite insightful. I will allow the opportunity for questions and for comments for now. I don't see any answer. Let me ask I just have two questions. In terms of the coastal versus inland, it seems, with the exception, if I'm correctly, look, in terms of solar and wind, that with the exception of Knysna, that basically in most towns, most municipalities can actually be used, or it will be feasible actually to have either a solar or wind project. Then the second question, my question is that whether that statement is correct. Then if I heard you say that if we have 35% of our roofs covered in terms of solar in the Gardner route, does it mean that it means that we can be independent, that energy, whatever you call it, would that be enough for us to be independent from any other source of electricity? But you are also predicting that we might only by 2040 only be able to have covered about 25%. I just want to know whether those two assumptions, that what I've heard, whether that is correct. And
yeah.
And there's a lot to talk about. And my last is just a statement. There's a lot to talk about independence, move away from Eskom. Is our endeavors to be independent from Eskom, or is it to have electricity available that is sustainable and cheap for our customers? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Fritz. Very good question. So, sorry, let me just actually put my mic on while we're talking. The first one, in terms of and this is one of the good things of renewables that I see. It moves away from very much in South Africa currently we're looking at most of our coal power generation coming from Mpumalanga, but renewables is allowing that to spread throughout the country. So the same is true for the Gardner district municipality, that besides Neisner's wind, all of the municipalities have a good resource. So a good solar resource and a good wind resource. So that it's not like it's only Oudtshoorn that's going to put solar PV. There's the variation between Oudtshoorn and George or the other municipalities is not significant. So, and that's why we're seeing not a particularly big difference between with wheeling or without wheeling. So there's obviously advantages to doing wheeling depending on the cost of wheeling. So how much Eskom is going to charge you for that. But the spread or the diversity of those resources is actually good, and it's good for the region because it's not good to have one wind farm at one spot for the whole of the Gardner route, because you don't get the diversity of, well, if the wind's not blowing now here in Oudtshoorn, it might be blowing in Kananaland, so that it's good to have that diversity. In terms of the roof space, I think let me just quantify that again, is that 36% is saying, which again is a completely academic exercise. It's saying how much of the roof space would need it to be installed to have 100% or 100 to have complete annual kilowatt hours covered. So so theoretically, if you did 100% of the kilowatt hours plus your battery losses, so then say add another 10-20% for losses, then you could be independent. But that is not saying that you're independent. That's just saying that that's the amount of energy need. So I think it's important to see that as an academic exercise. Nothing is sort of set in stone. So it's just showing, if later on, for instance, if you would go, well, solar PV plus batteries, is there enough roof space? Yes, there's enough roof space. So each customer or each municipality could then be independent. And I agree, and I really like your last statement. It's not about, and I'm sorry if it came across, this is the 100% autonomy is not about, well, that one is specifically saying, well, be disconnected from the utility supplier, from Eskom supplier by 2030. But I agree with you completely. The objective is not about being disconnected from Eskom. And I think there's still very much a space for municipalities to be connected to Eskom. I don't promote disconnecting from Eskom. I think it's the optimal solution is to be connected to Eskom, and that's what the research has shown. But I 100% agree with you. The ultimate objective is a sustainable energy supply industry, which is then, it doesn't quite matter where it comes from, but it's what's the optimal solution.
Thank you. I will read your question and then I see this hand. The one is the installation of solar PV being subsidized by government in South Africa? And secondly, is autonomy disconnection from the grid possible or allowed for private customers? Then let me just go and find then I have Mr. Michael Kwamba. You may switch on your mic. Michael? Your mic was on, you switch it off again.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. What I wanted to check in terms of the numbers, are these numbers that were displayed here for Bito, are the numbers that we reported on, or it was just a research that was done elsewhere? The reason why I'm asking this thing, we still have some numbers that are not yet registered in terms of the installation. Some people are reluctant actually to come forward. So we're still checking out the strategy,
Okay. So the question is that whether those numbers, because you still have, whether it's the numbers that you have fed into the research, because there's a problem still that people don't want to come forward. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. You can answer those three questions.
Yeah, so Michael, in terms of, I'm assuming you're referring to sort of this slide where we're talking about the adoption. So and I said this is a very difficult one for to get historic values on what's actually being installed for exactly the reason that you're talking about there is some people are reluctant, and some municipalities have been more pro solar PV installations than others. So this is based on information and discussions with the municipalities and with the Gardner district municipality as well. But again, these are estimates. So obviously later on, and this is one of the values or the benefits of being pro solar PV that you can actually get better information. But no, so yes, we consider the local environment, but no, this is not just purely based on registered systems, because as you say, that's underrepresenting the actual situation. And then, Mr. DeFries, I see the question from Kirsten: is the installation of solar PV being subsidized by the governments of Africa? The answer to that is generally no, it's not. It's where, so on a utility scale, so for instance, the REAP, the IPP program, that's a completely competitive system. Initially, with say bid windows 1 especially, there was a premium paid for electricity. Currently we're paying in today's terms over R4 for some of that electricity, but we're seeing with the newest bid windows that we're actually it's the cheapest alternative. And this is what's clearly showing through this research as well, is we're not installing solar PV and wind just because it's green. We're installing it because it makes the most financial sense within the symphony of electricity. It shouldn't just be seen as just solar PV and wind. There's a space for the technologies. And then, is autonomy disconnection from the grid possible, allowed for private customers? So, and I'm speaking from personal experience here. I purchased a farm not too far from sort of Neisner. There was no electricity on the farm, so we put in a solar PV off-grid system. So yes, it is possible to be autonomous, and this is what I think what the municipalities and utilities need to be cognizant of is saying our customers are no longer captive. They can actually ultimately disconnect, and what that's called is just deflection from the grid. And the problem with that is that if your customers start deflecting, the way that you need to recover your revenue becomes a smaller customer base. So that's what they call the death spiral, and it's not a very good place to be for a utility. But yes, it is possible.
Thank you very much. Let me just check whether there's any other comments. Don't see any. Thank you very much, Warwick. Let me then move on to our next presenter. And I assume just before you go, the information in the research is available through the district municipality. If any person is interested in your research that you have done.
Correct. Yeah. So Passmore has got this report. I'll forward this presentation on to Passmore as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Mr. van Schalkwyk. Mr. van Schalkwyk, as indicated, is part of the Green Energy Forum here in the Garden route as part of our economic clusters. He is an electrical engineer in profession. He has a master's degree also in energy and management development. We're focused on renewable energy programs for South Africa. He is a solar PV panelist and is involved in both training and technical support for PV installers and engineers and others, government or municipal officials and other stakeholders for the past 7 years. So welcome, Mr. van Schalkwyk, to our Skills Mecca Forum, and I will hand over the floor to you. If you can try to stay within the 20 minutes, it will be appreciated so that we can allow time for engagement also. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Fries, good morning, everyone. My name is Forder. Thank you for the introduction. I think that will suffice. Let me just quickly confirm if you can see the screen and it's all clear.
Yes, we can see.
Good. Okay. Just want to switch on the sound. I'll try to stick to the 20 minutes. So it was requested from my side to present a bit on solar PV, specifically on SSEG training, and then give a little bit of status quo on the skills requirement in this field. Let's just jump in. So I will start off in terms of discussing just to talk about the different training focus areas. I'll just talk a bit again about the skill requirements and maybe potentially engage you guys with regarding that, and then just conclude with some take-home messages. This is just a very short video in the context of one of our key services is to provide solar PV training for installers. Some of you are aware of the concept of the PV green card. So maybe just to show this video, and then I'll explain a bit more what it's about and where it fits in. Could you just confirm if you hear the sound? Someone
Yes,
could just
we can hear.
I'll go for
Yes.
it. Thank you.
The effort they put in at other courses, it's about a month's work, and we did it in 5 days.
The whole experience has been phenomenal.
The value that this course is providing is critical, is very important.
It benefits quite a lot to make sure that in future installations we can make sure things are done correctly.
It helped me understand a lot of standards, local standards as well as the international standards, because I don't only work in South Africa.
That was a perfect opportunity for us to get into the market with the solar, connecting with our pumps.
The trainers, they could take me from the level where I am, to the next level.
They were just exceptional. Great theoretical understanding, clear in terms of presentation and making things easy for the class to understand. Myself as a professional engineer, I would advise everyone in this industry of solar to come and attend this course.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, so like Warwick indicated that there's a very big potential in terms of rooftop installations, and it is something that can happen. But the challenge with that is that people are spending a lot of money, and I've actively seen so many installations done wrong, that's unsafe, a hazard, and people spending money and they have nothing to show for that afterwards. So it's really a challenge, and that's why it's so important that we upskill the people to do it right, but also to capitalize on this opportunity to get people work there. So the PV Green Card, for those who don't know, is a quality assurance initiative that's supported by SAPFIA, and they started this initiative to say, well, we've got the solar PV industry, and we need in some way to train and assess people for solar PV installations. So that's where the PV Green Card then comes in as a quality assurance initiative, and it complements the existing electrical trade or industry. So just to show you quickly on the pictures that you see here, the one picture on the top left is actually one of the trainees here in George, and those who would know the Steinhoff Industrial Park area there in George would know this is at Triple S. So we were actually one of our clients that provide in-house training. And there you can see in Randburg, we were doing some of the critical installations on that site. But yeah, that's not the key area that I would like to talk about. Just to talk a bit more about SSEG, or small scale embedded generation, and training and support for municipalities. So what is SSEG or EG? So SSEG stands for small scale embedded generation. Small scale meaning less than 1 megawatt. So you can think that your rooftop installations would fall mainly into that category. And embedded generation means generation that's sitting on the customer side of the meter. So it's physically on your premises, it's injecting power at the load where you're consuming power, and it's not there somewhere in the farm in the Northern Cape where you wheel the energy. That's the concept which Warwick was talking about. Now, up to, I want to say, a year ago, we were talking SEG or SSEG, but with the licensing exemption that was removed, that you don't need a license of about 1 megawatt, we start to move over to embedded generation. So in the past, our training was focusing mainly on less than 1 megawatt, but now we start to provide training and technical support to municipalities to deal with the larger systems, as more and more people are applying to install larger systems than 1 megawatt. So after this training, what is it that the municipalities will walk away with? So in essence, we want them to, first of all, walk away with an SSEG or EG application process. Now, one of our trainees, Michael Gwampa, he asked the question about people not registering their system. So one of the challenges in the past was that municipalities didn't understand the technology. they didn't have official processes in place, they didn't have documentation in place, they didn't have policies, they didn't know how to do commissioning. So all of these things are things that we address during the training and provide practical and on-site technical support to help them to put these processes and documentation in place so that people can then register their system in a sensible and sustainable way. Now, the question would be, why would this be important? You know, municipalities would argue, but if we do this, then we allow for solar PV. It's competition for us because there's now less revenue. But the reality is that there's much more than just that. So the first thing is they need to get these processes in place, because if they don't, you will have much more illegal installations or even non-compliant or unsafe installations. So that's why it's so important to have the system in place. Now, Michael at Bitto, they already have their system in place and they're processing a lot of applications. But it's important that, you know, the worst case or the worst thing a municipality can do is to do nothing. So that's why it's important to have processes and documentation in place so that they can prevent illegal installations. Is to make sure that the systems are safe, is to make sure that the power quality is acceptable in terms of the systems that they're installing, that they apply and open up for the green economy, right? So we're going into a green area, we need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. So it's all of these things that we try to achieve, and that's why it's important to have these processes in place and to offer the training. Now, we have assigned a 3-year contract for the next 3 years. So we also under the Sagen program, which Warwick spoke about. So that's where we're going to continue rolling out this training services, which is funded by GIZ. So it will be available for free to municipal officials. Okay. And then just a little bit of bringing it back to home. We've provided this SSEG concept training here in George. It was arranged by Stein from George Municipality, where we invited officials from George Municipalities and the surrounding area, where we've offered training specifically on SSEG for both the municipal officials, but also for the customers. Sorry, not customers, the consultants and the guys realizing and installing these systems. Okay, and then maybe just to explain why my background is looking like this and where I am. I'm currently sitting here in Tabong Creche. We, other than giving training to installers and municipal officials, we also, part of the DEG project, uplift the rural communities. And that's where we train them on agriculture so that they can realize and install, do agriculture activities, but to complement it with solar PV technologies. And where this fits in is in the concept of agrivoltaics, and I'm not going to go in there too much. I think that's maybe a discussion for another forum. But in essence, instead of building big solar farms and just producing electricity, you use that infrastructure to produce agriculture activities as well. So you can do high quality commercial agriculture activities. You've got crop protection. Mr. De Vries spoke about the climate change and hail and locusts and all of these things. That's a challenge. So if you have crop protection with your food production, and there's a symbiosis because the food production actually cools down the environment. It creates a microclimate and reduces the temperature, which is actually beneficial for PV. So there's a symbiosis going on between the food production. But anyway, so that's why I'm here. We are training people in areas that they are unemployed, they don't have opportunities to produce their own food with intention to sell one day, but we also bring in the technology so that it can complement the activities either with solar pumping, solar irrigation or solar pesticide applications, camera security services, lighting, and power supply. These guys are out in the field and they're kilometers away from electricity. So if they have solar powered power supply, then they can do much more in the field. Okay, so I've got a small activity for the group. If you can use your phone to scan the QR code. This will feed into my last topic I would like to talk about. So you can scan with your phone the QR code. If not, you can use your cell phone. Just type in that menti.com. And then when you need to type in the code, there's the code you need to type in. If you can't join or you're struggling, don't stress. Then just follow the discussions or the questions. But yeah, please scan with your phone or your QR scanner the QR code, or you can just go to menti.com and then put in the code. I'm just going to give 1 minute, and then we will start with the questions. I would like us to participate on the topic when it comes to the skills requirement in our area. Let me just quickly check. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that feedback, Worry. I agree. And I must say, we are very fortunate that a lot of the municipalities in the Garden Route area, Garden Route and Western Cape area has already established their processes in place. So that's really great. I'm just going to switch over to the next screen. Mr. De Vries, could you just confirm if you could see the updated screen?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So there's the code. Like I said, you need to go to menti.com. Just want to see. Go to menti.com, and then you need to put in that code. What I will do is I will send the link on the chat as well. So if you're struggling, you can use the link in the chat. I'm just going to quickly send it there. So there's the link. So you've got 3 ways. Well, now it's just 2. I'll send the link on the group. I see one person already responded to the first question. So go to menti.com, use that code, and then you will have some questions that you need to respond to, and then we can talk about it. Maybe just show the QR code again. The link in the chat, you can just follow that link, or you can go to menti.com, put in the code, or you can scan the QR code. It will immediately take you to the correct web page. Okay, Mr. De Vries, could you maybe confirm if you can get it right on your side?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. De Vries, you there? Great. So as soon as you are there, you're welcome to start responding to the question. And then once we've got feedback from a few, then we can talk about it. There we go.
Do you indicate whether you are able to connect, or do you have challenges to connect, so that we can just
support, yeah.
Move on to the next question.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. De Vries. There we go. 10 people responding. Wonderful. Just want to quickly, I think it is in this slide. Okay. Right. So I'm going to keep it like that. There's 10 people already responded. So there's a third that's coming back. So the question was, which of these energy generation options is expected to create the most jobs per megawatt installed? And there's a research being done by an institution called Renewable Energy Academy of South Africa, RENAC, of Berlin. They're sitting in Germany. And they've investigated various forms of energy generation. And what they've seen is that specifically on solar rooftop, it actually will create much more jobs compared to other technologies, especially when it comes to the construction or the installation of these systems. And one might argue and say, yeah, but if it's constructed, it's done. If you look at the expected growth it's going to be for a few decades that we're going to install solar systems, up to 2040, 2050. So there's really a big opportunity in terms of installing solar PV systems. But yeah, the correct answer is solar rooftop. I've got a nice graphic that will just show the comparison between the technologies. Okay, I see there's already people responding to the second question, and this is something that I would like to respond to as well. The question is, what are the challenges and opportunities when it comes to skill development for renewable energy industry? And here you as an industry can now respond to say, you have people employed, you want to employ people. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities in that regard? So yeah, great to see you can respond more than once. So you're welcome to send more. You can send a challenge and an opportunity separately. Let's see what we've got so far. There's a question on what is the first course to train people on. The first course is called the PV Green Card Training. And we're already in discussions to see if we could potentially start a training center here in the Garden Route area. So please be on the lookout for that, because that is one of our intentions. Training providers, I think that could go both ways, a challenge and an opportunity, right? So if there's an opportunity to have more training providers, and it could be a challenge that we don't have enough. Challenges is awareness and training young people on the opportunities and job creation. You're quite right. I mean, we see it here where we train on solar PV. The eyes go open. They're like, we didn't realize that this is available. It is high level skills, I believe skills. Hopefully it's skills. Solar rooftop, I believe, is an opportunity available of service providers. Okay, so I believe that's to employ. Standardization of rooftop installations, the industry not adapting to the changing environment. There's an opportunity for most regional approach. Yes, I must agree, that is a big challenge because the existing standards does not provide fully for solar PV. There are some solar PV and DC standards in place, but it's not really addressing embedded generation. So it's not leveling the playing field. It's a big challenge. And another reason why the PV Green Card comes in to complement and fill in the gaps that's in the standards. Opportunity to bring young people into employment, 100%. That would be a key intention with this. Cost, politics, right? Training materials that's not aligned to industry requirements, inequality. Actually, while we're on this topic, maybe let's just talk about my response specifically on this. My experience of being in the field is that there is definitely a need and there's a large opportunity for employment. It's definitely there. I can point out to various companies engaging us saying, listen, do you have people that we can employ? But this is where the skill development comes in. The challenge is they need people that know what they do and they've got experience to do the work. And this is the big challenge. The people with experience that can do the work, they're either already employed, getting a good salary. So now you need to take him away from that institution at a high salary, which is not always feasible. Or you need to employ people with limited experience, with limited knowledge, and you have to train and coach them. And that can take anything from 6 months to 18 months before they really start to do the work properly, in a safe way, without making mistakes, costing you money, and getting to a point where you can use them. And the unfortunate thing with that, especially with millennials and the Gen Z, is they tend to hop around. So as soon as they can start do the work, then other companies with big money can buy and employ them. So that's really my experience in the field, is that there's definitely an opportunity in that regard. It would be good if one can quantify that, but that's why this training and support is quite important. The unfortunate thing is, the training we're offering is private. People are paying with their own money to attend the training. So a lot of people, if I see this in terms of inequality, people that can't afford it cannot come into the industry because they can't afford the training. So our training is XR accredited, so we've got the CPD points, and if it is something that's of importance, we are registering our training at the Northwest University as a short learning program. So from a funding perspective, if that's something that's important, we can also always work through them as well. So just to continue, okay, we've looked at lack of employers and lack of training centers in Gardner area. Like I said, that's something which we hope to address hopefully very soon. Opportunity and benefits will result in clean energy and less emissions. People, I think we should not forget about this. We tend to think only rand and cent. We only think to think job creation, which is important, very important. But we have to think of climate mitigation and climate adaptation. So we have to reduce our carbon dependency. We have to look after our environment. So if we, and I think this is something we should think about. It's not just about saying, okay, but it's just the installing the solar. It's the whole industry around it. You've got the maintenance services, you've got the people supplying the materials. And if people can save on the energy consumption, it means that it's money they can use elsewhere. So there's other spin-off benefits and co-benefits of allowing for solar PV other than just reducing our energy. Okay, challenges is job opportunities and opportunities instilling skills in the garden route. Lack of funding for training. Yes, that's something I've mentioned, especially for those who can't afford it. I can get TVET colleges to become involved with PV training. That opportunity is there for TVET colleges to look into it. I know Saratech has a whole program now up in Gauteng where they're doing that. Work placement and what are the minimum entry requirements for the PV Green Card training. So I can just quickly mention there's no specific requirements to upfront requirements to attend the training. But it is highly advised that they do have some technical and good mathematical experience or background. So the intention with the PV Green Card is to open it up, not just for electricians, for non-electricians as well. But just to make it very clear, a PV Green Card person does not replace an electrician, and it does not replace the requirement for a COC for the electrical installation. So if it's a person that's a non-electrician, he will need to partner with an electrician to come into the play. And if it's a municipality that says they want a professional person to sign off, then that also needs to come to the party. The thing about the PV Green Card, it is a door opener. Some municipalities does acknowledge them, and we would see that as an alternative to the PRH person. But yeah, that's a little bit detail behind that. Where can we sign up for the Renewable Energy Workshop Assistance Skills Program for QCTO? Just to mention that those skills programs are still in development. My understanding is that it still needs to be formalized. So I foresee that as soon as that is in place, then the information will be available. Okay, right. Let me quickly go back to my slide. Right, so just to summarize on my discussion, first of all, I think training for renewable energy is available. The knowledge and the experience are there to offer the training, but we definitely need further development. Even the PV Green Card needs to adapt. In the past, it was focused on grid-tied systems without storage, and a lot of these systems these days are hybrid because of load shedding and people, reducing their dependence of Iscom or the municipality and increasing the self-consumption. And then, just to mention, skill development is a key for sustainable uptake of renewable energy and job creation. So if we really want to capitalize on this opportunity to in terms of increasing our renewable energy and create sustainable jobs, it's very important that we develop the skills and we expand on skill development and train these people to do the work in a proper fashion. And that is it from my side.
Thank you very much, sir, for that presentation, and also for the interactive way in terms of presenting and allowing us to give inputs as you present. I think that just check there was a question, or was it part? And perhaps the question did come up in the Menti discussion. It's about, would the type of jobs not be a very low level? Can't see the surname. I see could share.
Yes.
But before you answer that or respond, any other question or comment? I don't see. You can respond.
See, Warwick's got his hand up. Warwick, you want to go for it?
Is there? Oh. Warwick?
Warwick now.
Your mic is on, but we can't hear you.
Coming through now.
Now we can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry about that. The question around the sign-off, so the engineering sign-off from a PRN versus PV Green Card, I mean, for a residential installation, I mean, that is just such a high cost barrier. What are the options to get around that, or obviously still ensure that it's a safe, reliable system? But what are your recommendations there?
Okay, I think what we need to keep in mind is that municipality.
Before you go.
Okay,
sorry, before
sure.
you go, let's take their hands, because I'm trying to
Michael.
make up some time also. Michael,
Oh, good.
and then Lusanda.
Thank you again, Chairperson. Indeed, we have been engaging with FURA after during the COVID time. We had some training online. Even before COVID, we also had physical training. Like, they actually helped us, because before that we couldn't do anything, and we have also policy in place and all that, and also some tariffs in place as well. But what I've noticed, like now in the industry, I think there is a miscommunication, or mostly when the contractors advertise their services to their clients, it's more like it's more like they are saying they are going to replace the municipality bill, which is not the case. Now, I think that's why now at times they tend to be reluctant when they are when they are instructed to come forward for this, because one would say, how can I spend 100,000 but I still need to pay the municipality and all that? I don't know, how can we spread the word to the client as well, or even to the electricians as well, or installers as well? Because I think the challenge is there now, mostly in the residence area. We have not had a problem with the industrial that we have dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Lusanda. Are you still with us? I saw your hand, but I also see it seems that we have lost you. Or you're still Menze?
You said your question has been covered. I see in the chat you said the question has been covered.
Okay, thank you. You can continue.
Okay, great. So just to respond again quickly on what type of jobs or the low level. So if we talk about PV green card, like I said, it's always good if there's already some technical background. We've experienced people with limited to no technical background or bad enough really struggle. Even if they do the training, they still need to do a lot of work afterwards before they really get into the game. So it's open for them, but they really struggle to get into it. So it's good if you have a technician or electrician person or engineer that already has some electrical and technical background. They uptake, or even some solar PV installation experience, they tend to pick up quite quick. I think just to talk about the low level side is that when you do agrivoltaics, you have the benefits of you can use unskilled and semi-skilled people because you are in the agriculture space. So that's the opportunity that you've got there in terms of capitalizing on putting up solar farms. And the question about Warwick regarding the PV green card sign-off and the PR range, let's just first understand why that's required. Like I've mentioned, the existing SAN standards does not provide or cover all the requirements for solar PV, especially for parallel generation or Bennett generation, cogeneration, depending on what you're familiar with. And it's in that context that some municipalities say, we want a professional engineer to sign off on the NRS certification aspect. That's the utility interface side. Inverter certified, anti-islanding has been installed, the paperwork is in place, the correct labeling has been installed, the commissioning test has been done. So that's where they say they want the PRH person. But Warwick, you're 100% right. In the context of residential systems, this is a very challenging and a big cost exercise. And one should sit with the question is this practical? Now, that's one of the things that we try to achieve with the PV green card training, is we train the electricians or the PV green card person to understand what are the key steps and tests they need to do in the context of that NRS certification or sign-off. So there's always a legal contention because it's a question of, okay, but if something happens, can we take them to court? So that's where some municipalities say, no, we stick to the PRH. Other municipalities say, no, it's okay. We will accept an electrician COC with a PV green card form that's issued in addition to the COC, signed off by a registered PV green card person up to a certain size. So if it's 30 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt, or 500 kilowatts, we'll accept such a person. Anything beyond that, then we require a professional person to sign off, because then you've got economies of scale and the costs make sense. So that's the one. And then just to come back to Michael's response or question, yes, Michael, I'm aware of people saying, yes, we install solar and you go off grid, so you don't have to talk to the municipality. A few points there. First of all, the existing SANS stipulates that the electrician that anyway needs to issue the COC is supposed to engage the local supply authority and be aware of what's their requirements. So the law is already there. So there's no excuses for them to say, yeah, but they didn't know they have to talk to the municipality. And that's for all forms of alternative supply, including solar PV. That's point number one. Point number two, you are 100% right. It's so important that we have to inform the public and educate them about the challenges, the dangers, and the hazards of not doing it a proper way. And to get them on board so that they, register their systems so that you guys can manage it at the end of the day. So it's a very important one. It's a challenge nationwide. It's not just with you. I mean, even City of Cape Town, they've done a lot of work to get people informed, but they still have, I think, about 50% systems not registered. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I will immediately hand over to our next presenter, Ms. Anika Jacobs. who is the provincial manager of the local government seat. I hope that your title have not changed again, or sorry, yet, Anika. Sometimes the titles of people change. She is the CETA Forum Coordinator for the Gardner route also, but is also the coordinator for the Western Cape CETA Forum in the Western Cape. Over to you, Anika. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, everybody, all the panelists and all the attendees at this meeting. I'll just do a quick, just switch my camera on so people can see for those that don't. But I seem to have, my internet is unstable in the office. My camera doesn't want to even go on. Okay, but let me proceed. I see that either Floris or Reggie has put up our spreadsheet, which I basically use to track the funding that is flowing into the Garden Route District and commitments being made by all of the state education training authorities. We haven't had much movement from our last meeting, I think, which was in February, Chair. As you note, in terms of the calendar of skills development across the country, normally, and also in CETAs, the end of the financial year is normally the end of March. And obviously, we're all chasing to meet targets in our APP. And then the end of April, and for some CETAs, also the end of May, we are busy with receiving and responding to the submissions of workplace skills plans from our sector. So there hasn't been movement since my last presentation, but I'll quickly just go through this as you can see it on the screen. So commitment made by the TETA has remained fairly stable, funding 25 learners to the tune of just over R1 million. And it's a learnership in fish and processing learnership. The algae CETA, I think ours has also been fairly stable since our last engagement. I think we've just made an additional, I think, bursary allocation to Garden Route, and that to the tune of just over 2 million, 2.3 million from the algae CETA, benefiting 198 learners. Also in retail CETA, there's been no further commitments from them. 3 million has been the commitment in this district, benefiting 136 learners. The MER CETA, just under 10 million has been committed by them for 72 learners, and those are all apprenticeship programs, which is a 3-year commitment from the MER CETA. The ETDP CETA have a partnership with South Cape College to benefit 34 learners to the tune of 1.4 million. CAT CETA, the commitment just over 2 million, and that benefits 131 learners for various learning interventions. The new commitment that was made was by the chemical CETA for apprenticeships, RPL, and work integrated learning, which will benefit 123 learners to the tune of 6.9 million. So, Chairperson, as you can see, there is a steady increase from CETAs in terms of committing funding to the district. All we need to ensure as a skills maker as well and as a forum, funding is committed, that it's taken up, and that implementation, and that we have the desired throughput from learners so that they end and that they get certificated for whatever learning programs they've entered. So for now, this is the input from the CETA cluster. I'm hoping that at our next meeting, I would be able to do a more comprehensive and maybe more funding commitments. Well, so thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the next presentation. As you indicated, there will be more funding from the, I'm not sure whether you're talking about the local government CETA. Any question or comment or addition from one of the other colleagues, Reggie or Doc?
Or maybe if there's other CETAs in the meeting, they could also comment or maybe add. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to first thank Anika for her work. I know it's quite a lot of work putting all those numbers together from the 21 CETAs. So appreciate that very much. And I think, Anika, between now and the next forum, let's engage. Maybe we have a quick Teams meeting or something, because I think one of the other needs that we are starting to have in the district with the Gardner Skills Mecca is to start determining which seaters are going to be opening which funding windows when, so that we can start preparing proposals and so on across all the seaters and so on. That's where we are starting to move. I have a need for quite a few proposals.
Yeah, that's noted, Chairperson, and definitely we will keep the forum and at least Floris and Reggie abreast in terms of when funding windows are opening. I see Renisha from the EWC is also in the meeting, but I will surely make work of that.
Thanks very much. Great.
Thank you. I just anyone want to respond? I think it's from Renisha. Any of the commitment given before, has any project completed?
For now, I don't have that information at hand, but I can surely weave that into the report going forward, that we look at what commitments was made, when was project started, and when they ended, and exiting of learners, if that is the type of detail that we need for this forum. So I'll also take the guidance from the forum.
Okay, thank you. I think that what is added also to say is that, and what I'm always talk about is whether we can track some of the learners in terms of whether they have found some employment after the training. Thing I also want to add to say, even that also included whether they have started perhaps their own businesses, so that they can start to look also at the output and also in terms of the impact at a later stage. Thank you for those comments, Renisha. Just looking at whether there's any other comments in the chat room. Thank you very much, Nika. And your apology earlier is noted that you will have to leave us around 11:30.
Thank you, Chair. Everybody.
Thank you. Our next two presentations, I'm going to request that we first receive both presentations, and then we will have discussions on both presentations afterwards, because both of these presentations will speak about skills development, career pathing. The one presentation, the first one will be from the energy and water sector, and that presentation will be done by the CFO, Ms. Rupain Velakasi, and then our second presentation will be done by Ms. Kirsten Freeman, who's the head of project for career path development for employment with GIZ. So first, can I then also formally welcome Ms. Velakasi to our meeting. If you're ready, you can start with your presentation. Thank you very much. We can see your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. And can you hear me?
Yes, but we can't see you.
Excellent. Okay. I'm not used to operating Zoom, but I think we're going to be okay. And so I think just towards the end, I'll come onto video so that people can see my face, but I'll start with off with my presentation first. And I am attending this morning with Renisha, who is our provincial coordinator in the Western Cape on behalf of EWCETA. And just want to thank you guys for the invitation to collaborate. We were out there earlier this week having good conversations with yourselves, and it's also really a pleasure to present this morning. I'm going to take you through a very brief presentation, and it's based on, giving some background to the EWCETA and how we've been approaching skills development in the energy and water sectors, and also lifting a bit out of conversations that we had with yourselves a little bit earlier this week that's specific to the garden route. To begin with, I think it's just important for the forum to understand the way that we as EWCETA approach our work in terms of skills development. And for us, it's really an issue of impact. And the impact that we want to drive is represented by the last pillar on this slide, which is that we want to positively contribute to inclusive economic development, and that's across our country. How we do that is touching on the first 4 pillars. First of all, looking at ourselves internally, we realize and recognize that as the CETA, we need to have a high performance culture internally. Secondly, very importantly, and really something that has been highlighted as a gap, especially in light of the new, the emergence of the renewable energy industry, is that the importance of credible data that determines skills demand so that we can be able to respond to that demand. It's an area that I'll talk to a little bit later on as well, but we're finding increasingly that it is a very, very important aspect of what we do. The third pillar is around closing the pivotal skills gap, and that's really talking to skills delivery. And then fourthly, we've also identified that something that hasn't received a lot of attention in the past, but is increasingly important, is continuous professional development, especially when you've got new emerging technologies, sectors, when there's new thinking that existing professionals in the field need to be kept up to date with that. And also career guidance, which is about informing learners at school level about the careers available. I'm going to talk specifically to energy now, in the energy sector, but also obviously relevant in the water sector. And having a lot of education around that so that learners who do have the capability and the interest would be attracted into the sector. And together, that is our approach to how we want to build inclusive economic participation through the energy and water sectors of our country. I need to give you a high-level picture of our scope as EWCETA, because that is obviously what needs to be borne in mind in all of our interactions. So on the left, we serve the energy subsector, and on the right, also the water subsector. I'm not going to talk through the individual SIC codes, but these are the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Through them, the SIC codes that are allocated to us. And basically what this means is that the entities that register at SARS under these SIC codes become registered to the EWCETA. And this slide just basically shows how that is distributed. I'm going to try to just pull a laser up here quickly, and I hope it works. Okay. And what it shows is that out of our 2 industries, the energy subsector makes up 83% of the energy and water CETA, and water we've got at 17%. Overall, we've got a full employer base of almost 2,500 employers. That obviously changes as businesses shift seaters or as they come into the sector or exit the sector. We have mergers and consolidations and so on. But ultimately, we serve 2,500, give or take, entities or businesses within our 2 sectors. And unfortunately, and I'll explain to you why this is, unfortunately, we've got a very low revenue base with which to serve these very large industries and very strategic industries from a national perspective. So in the past year, this number probably needs some updating, and it's probably increased just slightly. But annually, we deal with approximately only 280 million of levy income, which is meant to capacitate or drive skills development in the energy and water sectors. So out of our, and the disconnect, I think, between these 2. So we've got a large number of employers at 2,500, but of these, only about 1,000 are levy paying, and then we've got 1,400 that are non-levy paying, and that's because of exemptions that are available for levy payers. I'll talk to that a little bit more just to show you how the entities in our sectors are made up in terms of size and the provincial distribution. So on the left over here, you've got the size of the entities, those 2,500 entities that I just spoke about, or companies. So we've got small companies making up 98% of our levy base. And small organizations, how they are typically defined, is those with less than 50 employees. These entities, enterprises, businesses, are not required to pay levies in terms of the exemptions that are granted to them. And this, herein lies the first challenge that we find when it comes to skills planning. We have the annual, the WSP process, which means that our sectors should submit, the 2,500 entities should submit their workplace skills plans to us, and this assists us hugely with skills planning for our sectors. But what we are finding is, because most of these entities are small, they are not required to, they're not required by law really to participate in that process. And as a result, for the majority of our sector, which is these small businesses, some medium as well, we actually do not have credible data that informs skills planning in the energy and the water sectors. We try to make this up through various interventions. So we are involved in a lot of research, but of course, again, if you look at our scope, we are not able to deliver on research for all of these sectors and subsectors and all of the different areas for research within the sector. And so while we try to get to it, we are dependent a lot on external research, and we try to give a lot of input into external research to make up for this gap that we have in skills planning. But what is really important to us is that even when entities do not pay levies because they are small and exempted, or exempted for some other reason, such as perhaps being a government institution, or they might be sitting with another seater, it is so very important that we do have some interaction with these entities to be able to plan the skills needs for our country. We need to know what the emerging sort of trends are around the energy and water sectors, and then also linked to that, very importantly, what the related skills needs are. And without that information, we start off with compromised planning processes, and that further then compromises the skills development process that needs to happen at a later stage. On the right-hand side, you will see our employer distribution by province, and it's more or less aligned also to, I guess, the GDP contribution of the different provinces, Gauteng being the largest, and we do have quite a large number of employees listed with us that are from the Western Cape. And so we do place a lot of emphasis, a fair amount of emphasis on the Western Cape. But what we also realize, and maybe to talk to where the Garden route is located geographically. We see, for example, while we don't have a lot of industry in areas like the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, the Northern Cape, we do, from a strategic perspective, recognize that where energy transition is taking place and where renewable energy has the capacity to grow as an industry, that we need to invest from a skills development perspective in those areas. And so we do place emphasis and focus on those provinces like the Northern Cape, Mpumalanga from a just energy transition perspective, and the Eastern Cape from a renewable energy perspective as well, to try to just make sure that we are having that we will have the necessary skills that are required for our renewable energy sector. So our approach to skills delivery and how we work with different partners. And let me first, as I bring up the word partners, let me talk a little bit about our partnership approach. It's an approach that we've realized from our learning over the past few years is something that really needs to be embraced and adopted. So internally as an organization, we have aligned ourselves accordingly that we're able to work quite easily with partners within processes that we've defined in the organization. And I'm going to link this to the discussion we were just having briefly about the discretionary grant windows for the seaters. So our approach is that we do have the windows, and that's where we try to do we don't try, but we've historically done, I guess, some of the bulk training that needs to happen in, let's say, the already existing industry. And it's the updating of people and bringing new people into the field, but mostly for existing qualifications and so on. But when we have an emerging sector, and that's also very strategic in terms of renewable energies, we realize that the discretionary grant window is not necessarily, because of the nuanced approach that's needed, it's not necessarily for us the most effective approach for partnering and for delivering on skills development. And so we've seen a lot of our just energy transition and renewable energy work happening through the partnership route. And I think that's just the first important thing to note, is that it's really important to partner for skills delivery where we are doing new and novel things. So, and we've definitely taken that approach internally. Couple of pillars for skills delivery from our perspective in terms of what we've seen works is this I cannot emphasize enough, industry-driven skills delivery. Sadly, and as I classify myself as a young person as well, you'll make the call when I come on camera. But as we've over, let's say historically, we have trained and had throughput of thousands and thousands of learners through skills development programs, whatever form they may take. And we still today see really high unemployment rates and really high youth unemployment rates in our country. And when we unpack this problem, one of the things that we see is that we would train learners as EWCETA, and I think some of the other CETAs would also experience this challenge. We train learners and we fund a lot of training and facilitate a lot of training to happen. And when learners go out to industry, the complaint from employers will be that the quality of the training for learners that's coming from a CETA environment is not good enough. Learners don't know necessarily what they're doing in the workplace, or their level of skill is just not good enough. And that partly is what is contributing to our high rate of youth unemployment. And we are saying to industry that the same industry who believes that the quality of training is not adequate needs to become really, really involved in driving the quality and the type of training that happens. And this is on a national scale. So it's very important that our learning programs or any training interventions are driven by industry, that industry gets involved in qualification development, gets very involved in that industry makes its workplaces available for learners who need to do their practical training, that industry participates in the skills planning process, because individual businesses can train the people that work for them to do what they need them to do, but you can never have an individual that is beholden to you. So that person can leave at any point. So that's why, from a country perspective, it's so important that the skills planning thing happens nationally. And us as the CETA are the ones who are supposed to coordinate that, but our planning is only as good as the data that we've got. So when it comes to skills delivery, industry plays such an important part and really needs to participate in whatever possible means in the determination of future skills demand, of current skills demand, and also in the delivery of that training through making workplaces available for practical experience. Our approach as a government entity is that we do align ourselves to the national imperatives. And I believe this is also what's happening in the Garden route from the research we've done and then also from our interactions with you. So from a renewable energy perspective, we align ourselves to the integrated resource plan, the just energy transition, the ERRP, the district development model. I can't remember the acronym you use in the Western Cape, JDMA it might be, and also the climate change agenda, which is an emerging conversation that we need to really get a grip on. And so when we collaborate with industry, we try to align our discussions to these strategic and national imperatives. And part of our interaction should also be giving us the information that if these things are not real and if they are not relevant, that's the type of feedback that we need to be getting, or if they are not fit for purpose, we need to be getting that feedback from industry. We also do believe we see that there are challenges in our post-school education and training system, our PSET system, and we are mandated. Historically, we've invested so much in our TVET colleges, in our community and education and training colleges, just purely from an infrastructure perspective, we've invested a lot, but also in the resources taken to run these institutions. And we are saying that we have an industry of private SDPs who often do very quality training at a very high level, but we are saying we need to balance that with the capacity that the country has already availed in the form of TVET colleges and CET colleges. And together with industry, they should also be brought into our skills development and skills delivery as a country. On the right-hand side, we also see that there is need for advocacy in the space of skills delivery, and it's something that we are for and that we promote. And so in all of our skills delivery, it's very important. And if I think just energy transition, labor unions are so important for, even just education around just energy, climate change, just transition. Labor unions become so important as a voice through which messages can be taken to their membership. And we also see the importance of communities and cooperative organizations in driving skills delivery, and also the jobs that need to get done at the end of the day. These stakeholders have a very important role. And so we see our role as advocacy with these stakeholders. And then very important here as well as, and what you've also mentioned, enterprise development. So the incubation, the skilling, and the support for emerging and existing enterprises, so that as I spoke to earlier, as we are driving inclusive economic participation, that is not only just participation through the form of employment, but very important through those who are going to create the future, going to create employment opportunities for others. And so all this for us comes together in I think this approach for building skilled communities, which I wanted to bring here, because obviously we are talking now at a region level, at a municipality level. And so in that space, there's the need to build skilled communities, which is obviously what Garden Root Skills Mecca would be about. And so just some thoughts on that, and I'll close off with this. What we've recognized, an integrated approach works, and an integrated approach is necessary. And so that's why we're very glad in the Garden Root that that's your skills development and your approach to skills development is an integral part of the JDMA process that is taking place and has taken place within the municipality. And what we are saying is that needs to continue. We see in a lot of different municipalities and different areas across our country that We do skills planning separately, or we do it after we do our other planning. And what we found is that that is too late. If you do it afterwards. If skills planning is not an integral part of our broader planning conversations, we are setting ourselves up for failure. And in a sector like the renewable energy sector, we are going to find ourselves on the back foot when it comes time for these skills to actually start to work. As a country, our learners are not going to be capacitated to participate in the economy, and these skills are going to come from elsewhere. And we really do not want to be in that position. And in our integrated approach, always good if we align ourselves, like we said, to strategic imperatives, your just energy transition and your IRP as an example. In terms of collaboration, and I started off talking about our partnership approach. This onion cannot be peeled in isolation, and we can't be working in isolation. So I think very important again for industry when it comes to demand determination to really participate and let us know and be very vocal about what the future skills needs are. Participating in the sector, and SSP here stands for sector skills planning, to participate in that process because this drives number 4, which I'm going to talk to a little bit later on. So very important that we collaborate when it comes to demand determination. That's industry, that is research institutions, that is municipalities such as yourself, and also that we collaborate when it comes to skills delivery by making workplaces available, by making ourselves available to participate in qualification development and so on. Communities also need career guidance. We do, through the Department of Basic Education, we do a lot of career guidance where we go, to individual schools and educate learners about our sectors, so that those, and this is even, I'm sure a lot of us can personally relate to it. I know I can. When a 17 or 18-year-old is making a decision about what it is that they're going to do after school, it's really informed by their frame of reference. And what we're trying to do, what we're saying is really important, is to broaden that frame of reference to include careers in the energy and water sectors. And so this is a really important part of our approach. And in collaboration with industry. So it's always better in collaboration with industry. Because industry can talk to a learner about what a career is really like, what it really looks like and what it feels like, without just being sort of theoretical about it. They need that to be made very real for them. And so we haven't had a lot of participation with industry in career guidance, and we're seeing that that's a big gap. Qualification development. So the way our approach works and across the sectors is that our sector skills planning, which is determining the demanded skills in our sectors, needs to inform qualification development. If there are areas in which we need certain skills, qualifications, and where those are not available, our qualification development really needs to be of a high standard, and it also needs to embed future skills. Very important. So when we're talking, I'm not going to obviously really talk to what future skills are. I think we all have a good idea about it. But the nice thing with future skills is that often it can just be an add-on to an existing qualification. And so it's really important to think about that as we do qualification development. But again, industry's role in this is so important. And the way that qualification development works is that by definition, industry should be a part of it. But we're saying, when you have different voices and different perspectives and the right level of experience in the room, the process is so much more robust. As EWCETA, and it might be across the CETAs as well, we've got a lot of qualifications that have been developed, and our qualification development process takes long. That is a challenge, and it's a challenge that we are working on. But we spend the time, we invest the time, and then the qualifications are not really taken up And what we're finding is that there's a couple of components to that. So first of all, the process may not be exactly what it needed to be. And often we find it's because of not sufficient participation by industry. And also, once a qualification has been developed, we need to accredit workplaces for the practical component of qualification development. And we are not seeing workplaces step up and make themselves available to become approved for that purpose. And so that limits our ability to offer that qualification to learners. And then, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, industry would be the ones who say, the quality of our learners is not good enough, or the learners don't really have the skills that they need. And so we all have a very important role to play in that. And then again, just lastly, from a community perspective, inclusiveness, really important. So how we embed our TVET, how we leverage our TVET infrastructure and our community. I didn't put CET over here, but our TVET and CET infrastructure, even our existing university infrastructure, and that we also think about our persons with disabilities, and we think about gender, so that we don't get to a place where in 10 or 20 years, when we're looking at leadership in the energy and water sectors, it's not really representative. That's something that we have to attend to today. And when we're doing skills planning and skills delivery, we need to take that inclusive approach today for the sake of the future. That concludes my presentation. So just give me 1 second. Okay, I will try. I need to demonstrate my future skills now, but I really can't. I don't know. I'm not sure how to stop presenting.
There's a little button that says stop share, top.
I don't have that button.
Oh, it could be at the bottom as well, next to chat.
Could be, yeah.
And then there's the share screen, and then raise your hand.
There you've done it.
And I called myself a youth, but I can't use Zoom. That's not right.
There she is.
So hi, that's me. I started sharing too early and I couldn't put my camera on as well. But thanks again for the opportunity to present this morning, and I look forward. I'll be around for the rest of the session, so I look forward to the interactions.
Thanks, Robert. Can I check, is our chairperson with us?
You on mute, Councillor De Vries.
Colleagues, I know that Councillor De Vries was booted out of the Zoom just now. He had to come back in. I'm just wondering if he's now struggling with his sound.
He is unmuted on our side.
Yeah,
so
it
could
shows
be from,
unmuted,
from his PC. Yeah.
You know what? Oh, okay. I've just got a message that we should proceed. Okay. While the councillor continues to sort out his connectivity, I'm then going to go straight onto our next presentation, and that is Ms. Kirsten Freeman from the GIZ organization. It's really a pleasure to have her on board today. I've met her a while ago, and so really nice for her to be able to be here. So Kirsten, I'm going to hand over to you. Will you share from your side as well?
Yeah, thank you, Flores. I'm not so familiar with Zoom, but I will try to share my screen.
There you go.
Can you see the presentation?
Perfect. Yes, 100%. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, again, thank you for inviting us from GIZ. Maybe some of you are familiar with the German Development Corporation, maybe the SAGEN program that was also mentioned by a presenter before. So I'm here to present a new program that is about to to start by beginning of June, and the name is the Career Path Development for Employment. And it's looking at skills development for just energy transition. So that is the interesting background, and I will introduce it here. Obviously, I cannot. I can only give an outlook because, as I said, the program is about to start. But it is also building on experiences that have been made with the predecessor program. So I will also talk about that, but I will keep it quite short. So it's maybe 10 minutes or something. So as said, the program is supporting the South African government, in particular the DHET, through support of the German government and also the Swiss Development Corporation. Okay, so what is the background for our intervention? So we identified two major challenges that we would like to work on and support. That is one, the economic recession, and in particular the dramatic high unemployment rates that we see, especially amongst youth and female. I think I do not have to explain the devastating figures that we are seeing here, and the spiral that is still going downward. So that's very frustrating, and as you can see by the name of the program, the idea is to support employment, even in this very difficult times that we are seeing at the moment. At the same time, we see this huge transition, which is the energy transition, so the transformation to a decarbonized economy, which will have significant impacts for employment and qualification needs on the job market. Also that I think no need to explain further in this forum. So South Africa is planning to support that this transition will be a just transition. But what we are seeing as a problem is that, especially for young South Africans, neither there are sufficient employment prospects, nor are they geared to the long-term potential of this largely decarbonized economy. So what we would like to support with our program is to generate employment prospects by stimulating the demand side and sectoral orientation on relevant sectors of the just transition. And that's very important to understand as a background for our project. As I mentioned, the CPD4E program is building on experiences that have been made with the skills development for a green economy program that is coming to an end. And we are going to continue to support the TVET system of South Africa. But as I said, we will adjust our orientation from employability to employment, so shifting the focus from the quality of TVET towards the employment of young people especially. And the sectoral focus will be on the just energy transition. So this is what I just explained, and that we have an approach in GIZ, or in the German Development Corporation, that we call the integrated approach for employment, and that takes into consideration three pillars that are the demand side and the supply side, and in the middle the matching, and as a foundation to say so, the framework conditions. And the new program will work on all these three pillars to support employment at the end. So the idea is to, when coming from the supply side, to improve employability, but at the same time support the demand side, which is the private sector, obviously, to create employment. And to bring both sides together, we are supporting information orientation, placements, and so forth, like active labor market measurements, we call it, to bring young South Africans into employment by connecting supply side and demand side. Framework conditions we are touching, but it's not a focus of the project. And here it's more detailed what we are planning to do. And that's maybe also interesting now for you as stakeholders to learn that how our interventions will look like. So on the roof of this kind of house, you can I put here the goal of the project, which is the employment prospects of young South Africans in a sustainable and increasingly decarbonized economy. Just transition are improved. So as I said, it's about employment. And so different interventions. So if I look at the supply side first, so we want to support demand-driven TVET and skills development offers by improving delivery capacities, for example, lecture and in-company mentors trainings, but also supporting the development of new occupational profiles, curricular development, development of short skills programs, and more agile training programs, and to strengthen the private sector with their involvement in those agile training interventions. Because what we see is, and that is one of the learnings of the 6 years or even 7 years of predecessor program, is that the TVET system is quite that our observation was is not flexible enough to react to the direct needs of private sector, especially now when it comes to the just energy transition. And we are hoping by supporting more agile training interventions to better meet the needs of the private sector in the labor market for employment. So here we are going to support new interventions and new training formats by piloting new interventions, as I said, but also we are building on some pilots that have been run already, for example, for solar PV installation training courses. At the same time, what I already mentioned is that we want to support private sector on the demand side to unlock employment potentials. So here we are planning to support SME development, especially in township economies and in ecological industrial parks, and also to support entrepreneurship in order to create employment, to create jobs. As I mentioned, the matching side, so bringing together supply and demand, will look like that we want to support, will support the transition from learning to earning of young graduates. So meaning we will support matching matching soft skills trainings, entrepreneurship training, and especially specific measures for girls and women, because obviously those are especially vulnerable groups when it comes to employment. Above all of that, one pillar is the innovation and learning outcome. So as I already mentioned, we are especially looking are on the lookout for innovative approaches for employment promotion. Here we have a few ideas, for example, performance-based financing, where we did run a study and already where we can build on. We are also looking at and upskilling, and what we are also intending to do is learning and capacity building to create an offer for stakeholders and decision makers on the just transition agenda. So quite a wide scope. And as I said, we are still in the conceptualization phase for these interventions. Here, a quick overview on the project. As I said, it will start June this year and run for 3 years, maybe 4 years, with a budget of 10.5 million euro coming from BMZ and SECO, and our partner is DHET. So next step, we will start 1st of June and then continue with the further conceptualization and preparation of CPD4E, which means that we want to need to create common understanding, of course, with DHET, but also the ecosystem and stakeholders. We are going to work together, setting up steering structure, joint development of roadmap, and then we are also on the lookout for possible implementation partners. And then we will do the operational planning for the first year and continue then from there. Yeah, of course, the evaluation and consolidation of measures from the predecessor program. And what we are also planning to do is an employment and labor market analysis called ELMA to find out about challenges to employment generation, especially when it comes to skills for just energy transition. That in a nutshell. And yeah, I'm not sure, maybe Floris, you also want to come in and share some of your thoughts, because you have been part of the SC4GE program.
Yes, thank you, Kirsten. I can just add briefly that the ST4GE, I think phase 2, colleagues, was a program that has substantially helped us in South Africa, particularly with the new apprenticeship system that is being rolled out. And even here in the Gardner route, we have been benefited through the new dual system approach. And a lot of that work was supported by the GIZ organization under the previous ST4E, as well as a very recent, and I say very recent because we've only just finished the first pilot on it, a very recent program where we are developing a very interesting new, almost a new occupation, I think, or we're formalizing an existing occupation. I think there's been a lot of people doing the work, but they haven't had formal training or a formal qualification for what is known as a workplace learning development practitioner. Or this is a person that goes and works with employers so that employers can open their doors and take more learners. It's a program very well supported by GIZ, and it's just coming to the end of a pilot now, and we hope to be discussing soon how we can extend that so that we have more of those things. So thanks very much, Kirsten, for your introduction today. I think after we've had some Q&A with the chairperson, hopefully he is back, then I can round off with how we hope to put all of what we were today together in a bit of a way forward. Let me pause there and check if Stephen is back. Stephen?
Thank you, Doc. I'm back, but I'm not sure for how long. So if it happens, I'm now on the second or third device already. Okay. So if something happens again, please proceed with the meeting. The floor is open for comments and questions on the two presentations, but also for the two presenters, that they can also engage each other's presentations, or if they have questions or comments. Thank you. And unfortunately, I've missed a part of the discussion, so I will listen to the questions. Can I ask Michael? You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. Now, what I wanted, like, I think we have the same scenarios for people that you have been in the industry already. Now, at least with the electrical, because we are working both mechanical and electrical. Yeah, at least with electrical, I think with some people have managed to get their trade test through the African skills or something. But when it comes to mechanical side, I think we're still struggling, more specifically in garden rotor of some sort. If we can consider that in terms of development, that would be appreciable, more specifically around NISNA, I think Plaid at least, or I don't know if the George is doing well in that regard. Now, the other issue, you know, when I was at school, I was told that, okay, actually, there's been I don't know how can I put it, but there's been an issue that there is there's a shortage of skills, like engineers in South Africa. Né? But what I've discovered out of that, there in reality there's no such a thing, but people are out there without the proper assistance. Some they are there in need of training. There are people that have not done internship or training that I've worked with. They would have only S4 would have started with. There are those that have already got experience, but they still can't be employable. All that can we try to shape our initiative toward that rather than. I appreciate even to take people from outside whom they're not those that are not educated yet. But my concern is about those that are facilitated, whom I have a qualification, but they can't do anything because they have not completed their qualification, be it the lack of experience, or some they've got experience, but they can a limited experience to be employable.
Thank you. I saw a hand of Leslie Jacobs. Leslie, you're muted.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wanted to respond to my colleague, pardon, Mr. Kwampa. But I'm going to keep it short just to say that we have taken note of the lack of mechanical experience in the Bito municipality. It's something that Doc will echo when we say we are working towards a plan to increase the level of skills in terms of that. It's I think the departments just need to come together and define our collective activities around that. So he need not be scared. I'm very interested in the last presentation that Kirsten did. I did send Doc a WhatsApp on the side to say, can we have it? And yeah, that's the extent of my contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any response? I think what the first speaker was talking about also was the issue about, I think people that the problem with the qualification or half qualification because there was no, if I'm correct, in-service training. And how do we deal with, and I think also where people have the full qualification, they are not employable. How do we deal with that? I give over to the two presenters. Kirsten, perhaps you want to go first?
Well, yeah, it's a very difficult question, and it's yeah, maybe also my colleague Lawrence can come in here because he's also from our project and he's very experienced with the South African context. But this is exactly what we are wrapping our heads around. Like, how can we support that not only employability and not only training, but especially young people do find their way into the job market. But maybe Lawrence, this is also a chance for you to come in.
Perhaps, perhaps just a connection that I noted from the different presentations. I asked the question that traditionally when you installing solar panels to dumb the system down, you don't necessarily need engineers to do that. It's mostly semi-skills that would be doing that type of training as well. And then we also have from, I think it was Michael who mentioned, and this is a well-known fact in South Africa, that the work integrated learning part or the experiential part of the University of Technology as well as the TVET people is an area which is very difficult at this point in time to solve at the same time. So for me, there might be a definite connection here. Where, say, for example, if we can unlock the employment potentials in terms of, say, the voltaic panels that we're referring to now, the small businesses, and we can tie in the people that already have some knowledge in terms of the electrical engineering, which is out there, we could actually do both here. There might be a connection.
Thank you. Robin?
Yes, I was also going to. I think that the previous speaker that spoke just before me referenced, the work integrated learning. I think that there is potential, and it will depend obviously on the specific area where this issue exists, like the specific qualifications where people have gone to school but they've not had the workplace experience. And they also, even if they've received their qualifications, don't have the experience to be able to access employment opportunities where experience is required as a starting point. So programs around pure work placements and internships is something that needs to be looked at in this regard, because and these, you can fund these projects specifically where the purpose of it is to just get someone who has been in school with or without their qualification to get the requisite experience to either complete their qualification or to have the experience that they can go and show to an employer or use as a basis for starting their own business. So programs specifically focus on internships or work integrated learning only become very important. Our experience, or how we've, I can maybe talk from a national perspective. Kirsten, you're still sharing your screen.
We can see all your emails.
Oh no! You don't want to see something.
I think you can.
Don't worry, it wasn't too bad.
Don't worry, we didn't understand. We couldn't read.
We didn't understand.
Yeah, it was all in German.
Yeah. From our perspective, how we've specifically worked at this is we have worked with TVET colleges and universities of technology. And at that point, learners who've done the theoretical learning, taken them at that point specifically on work placement to be able to gain their qualifications. And that's been done quite successfully when you work directly with the TVET college. And then on internships, what assists is to work with industry associations in the renewable energy space. As an example, we've run successful internship programs with organizations like SAWIA, and the other name fails me at the moment, and also institutions like the Innovation Hub on specific internship programs to address that gap. So those are perhaps areas to look at.
Thank you very much. I think that also the important part, then, especially on this discussion, is the issue around the importance of the employer as a stakeholder as we roll out these programs, because that will solve our problem in terms of, especially whether it's through RPL, internship or learnership that must be completed, the work placement becomes important. And with our processes, I think as we move forward in South Africa in terms of skills development, that the employer, for me, becomes the key stakeholder. Although the learner is still key, I think that for a long period, the emphasis was on the learner and not really on the employer. So we must bring them on board to ensure that we can move forward with skills development. Doc, I don't see any other hands. Can I then, I know that at the end, as that you can just give us a wrap up, or I think that you also still have something to present that will give us a way forward on some of our discussions of today on the Just Energy program.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe I can just quickly also preface my comments with a word of gratitude for our presenters today. I know that both Warwick and Fora have already left. They're busy doing the other work, but Robin and Kirsten are still here, and we really want to express our appreciation. I think there's been a huge amount of learning here today, and I just want to mention that as this is a public webinar, we advertise it, and so on. We also record it, and we then do place it also on our websites for further reference and so on. And we do a bit of social media marketing around it. And so even though today people might be busy working in the garden route on Fridays, people try to work very hard to finish early. Not many people work beyond 1 o'clock on a Friday in garden route. It's just a culture down here. But rest assured that this wonderful information that you have shared with us will be available. I also use it when I go and visit the other local municipalities. For example, out at Bitto, my friend Leslie Jacobs, who's been with us on the platform, I've already shared some stuff with him. And it's great because I work directly with almost all the local economic development managers now in all the municipalities. And it's really beginning to get a lot of traction as we go forward. So I just wanted to start with those comments, Chairperson. In terms of today's discussion, certainly the Gardner Skills Mecca will move ahead, we believe, with the Just Energy Transition project or program or concept or whatever we eventually call it, and so on. So I just wanted to share with you colleagues basically what we are already starting to think of doing. Just as a reminder that in the Gardner Skills Mecca process, we have very clear resolutions that were agreed by stakeholders over a period of 2 years, and we work very closely against them. Chairperson, somebody, I'm not too sure, I think it might be Leslie, somebody's microphone is on. I'm getting quite a lot of back feed here. Okay. Item 4 is about all skills development processes in the garden route always proactively considered. Sorry, Leslie, could you put your microphone off? Just hearing some feedback there. Thank you, sir. Okay, so we work very closely with that resolution, and so the work around the Just Energy Transition fits perfectly into our frame of work. We also have a very active Green Energy Forum, and you heard, for example, Fora, a member of that forum, and I know that Warwick has been presenting there regularly as well. The chairperson of the forum is on leave at the moment, but he is looking forward to hearing what we spoke about when he returns. And of course, that forum helps us with our demand-based skills. And you would have heard that particularly the EWC colleagues, Robin, and also from GIZ, very, very demand-based is really where we want to go. And so we've started to put together this picture. It's still very much work in progress, but I think you will recognize, particularly Kirsten, you will recognize that it is really the CPD4E sort of structure where we have demand, matching, and supply. And we're already starting to look at a nice little survey. We have an excellent survey team here at the district municipality where we go out and survey people for demand. And you'll see the survey already. We're starting to look at some of the skills programs like Workplace Essential Skills, Renewable Energy Workshop Assistant, Workshop Tool Assistant, PV Green Card, Small Business Development, Entrepreneurship. Those are the sort of programs that we will survey to determine what sort of take-up, demand, interest there is across the district. And we work through our business chambers. We have 17 business chambers and also our 8 municipalities. And hopefully once we have that sort of data that's come in, we can start putting a little bit more of a concrete proposal together. And on the supply side, once we start delivering it, we believe that the EWC and ourselves could be great partners in coordinating it. We work through our public institutions, TVET, Community College, and also Saratech, a very good partner. And then we might even go out on a private sector tender process so we get as many people involved as possible. So this is work in progress, as chairperson, and we hope over the next week or so that we'll start particularly with the survey. So the next steps, just to summarize and end off with, certainly step one, based on what we've now heard from the CSIR, our first option is to go solar. I mean, the fact that he says that we have, our first target really is 36% of our roofs to be covered that will meet our existing needs. That would certainly be our absolute first target to go solar. And so we're going to see how we can get there, how many years it will take us. I think that we've already had a firm commitment and offer from the EWCTA, both on Tuesday when we met with the CEO and the CFO. Also today, I think it's been confirmed by the CFO that they're quite interested in a partnership agreement with the district municipality. We're going to do that JET survey. I've now learned this new acronym. I never knew exactly what the JET was, but now it's just energy transition. So I'm going to do that survey. And once we've got these data in board and so on, then we'll start looking at how do we put a project proposal together to maybe table with our GIZ colleagues over the next little period while they are conceptualizing their possible partnerships. So Chairperson, that's the plan. And as usual, when we end off forums like this, I usually walk away with more work than anything else. But I mean, that's exactly why we're here. So I'm looking forward to continuing the work with our partners. Thank you, Chair, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Before I say our goodbyes, perhaps Robin and Kirsten, any final thoughts on our way forward?
Just
Kirsten?
yeah. So thanks again for inviting us, and thanks especially to Doc to bringing us together. And yeah, I'm looking forward to potential partnership, because I think there's the topics that we are thinking about were addressed during this webinar, and many of these aspects are coming together here that are interesting for us as well. So yeah, looking forward to look into that further. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin?
Yeah, the same thing from us as well. I think from the discussions throughout this week and certainly attending the forum today, it's very clear that we are aligned in terms of the intention of the Garden Root Skills Mecca. So we're really looking forward to the future engagements and actioning these next steps.
Thank you. You see there's a comment somewhere. Another just Mr. Hoffman that have just left us, says that he has something else to do. And as Doc have indicated in the Garden Route, we only work until 1 o'clock on a Friday. So colleagues, thank you very much. And thank you for attending. Thank you for our panelists for making the time to join us. And as as outlined by Doc in terms of the way forward, we try and always endeavor that our discussions or deliberations doesn't remain just workshops and seminars, as often we are blamed for use of in South Africa, but actually that we have action plans afterwards. And within our next meeting, we will come back to this forum and we'll report progress on what we have discussed here. Thank you very much and enjoy your weekend. Thank you.